Hi, it is Cassie with Oddball Escapes, and with COVID impacting travel into this season, into the 2021 travel season, I've been asked about itineraries that are closer to home that may actually have a chance at happening and may not get canceled. So, over the next several weeks, I want to highlight different itineraries, share with you my experiences from these different regions, and I'm going to focus on tours. I highly suggest a tour. Maybe I'm impartial because I used to be a tour guide, but guides will stay on top of all of the details. So when you sign up for a trip, they'll know what's open, what's closed, if any adjustments are necessary to that itinerary. And then of course, they're going to maintain those protocols that are in place for cleanliness and basically for keeping people spread out and safe for the COVID situation that we're still trying to travel in. Okay. So for this week, I want to highlight Alaska. Yes, this is one of my Shutterfly books from my Alaska trip. And while the cruise season is still uncertain, there are lots of questions on how cruising is going to resume later this summer and if and when and how and all of that. So we want to kind of just forget about cruising for the moment. And I hope that you know that you can visit Alaska and enjoy everything that Alaska has to offer without taking a cruise. And that's the itinerary I want to show you today. Let me pull up a couple of screens here. This is, oh, look, this is my Shutterfly book. Literally, I'm going to show you the inside layout of the Shutterfly book. And keep in mind, this was how I experienced the destination. The pictures that you get, maybe you're not into taking photos. That's fine. You could go to the same place 20 different times and get a different photo from that place, 20 different photos. So keep in mind that while I'm going to share this with you, it's not necessarily guaranteed that this is the way that you're going to see it. But in this picture, we're going to I'm going to keep this pulled up. This is the map of this itinerary. I want to focus on this 10-day itinerary because I love three parts about it. This part right here, Denali National Park. Yes, it takes you into Denali. You get that experience. I'll show you more about that in a moment. But you also get this experience right here into the park on the Alaska Railroad. You get to take that famous train ride that I'm sure is on the top of your list for that Alaska experience. Plus, when you're down along the coast, it gives you two opportunities on this itinerary. One over here toward the end of your tour and one toward the beginning. I don't know why I did that backwards. One toward the beginning, one toward the end, so that you get out on the water twice to try to view the glaciers and the marine life. And the fact that there's two viewing experiences is awesome. I'll go through that a little bit more as we go through the itinerary. This particular itinerary is 10 days long. You can make it shorter. There's an amazing 7-day option as well. And there's a 13-day option that actually takes you over into Canada. The reason I'm not mentioning the Canada one right now is we don't know how that's going to be affected by the COVID regulations. Passing from Alaska in the US over to the border in Canada and then back into the US, it's just a little more complicated at this exact moment. But this 10-day option, you arrive into Anchorage and you fly back out of Anchorage. Super simple, right? So in a normal world, you could combine this with a cruise, that 7-day cruise that takes you down along this Alaskan coast on the Inside Passage. You could combine that. We're not going to necessarily go into those details at this particular moment. And let's see here. I'm going to flip back and forth between this screen and this screen because now we're going to show you some of the photos of how what this itinerary means. So for example, going back, these are just little dots, right? These are, you start in Anchorage at this green spot, you work your way going this way around here, and you come back to Anchorage on the red spot. And every time you see a dot with a number, that's how many nights you stay at that destination overnight at a hotel. And then all these little white dots are the places that you get to visit in between. Normally, when somebody looks at an itinerary, they don't know what that means. It's just it's a word on a map, right? I want to bring that to life for you, and so that you can see if this experience is the experience that you're hoping to have when you're in Alaska. Okay. Again, it's just a glimpse into what this experience could be, and every single trip is a different. I keep saying the word experience, but it's going to be unique for exactly what you get to see. Okay, so let's keep this up. The very first thing I want to say is when you're in Anchorage, day one is your arrival, and day 10 in this itinerary is your departure. So really day one, they're hoping that you get settled into your hotel in Anchorage. You really don't have anything on the itinerary on day one except for getting there. And then the last day is, hey, you end with breakfast in the morning and you pretty much can head out. If you want to extend before or after, this 10-day option allows that to turn into like the 2 weeks and really taking advantage of your full 2 weeks. So there's 8 full days worth of stuff. And let's go ahead and start working our way from Anchorage, because Anchorage really isn't included in this, just to throw that out there, that you're not doing much in Anchorage. So once you get into Anchorage, you kind of get to see the city a little bit, and then you head on out to Valdez, where you will spend 2 nights. Now, this says Tahitian Pass. It talks about Prince William Sound. Let's bring those to life for you. Okay, very first thing, how are you getting around this itinerary? Yes, it's by bus. And some people, when they say, oh, it's a bus, I don't want to be riding on a bus all the time. The bus rides really aren't that long. It's a really neat way to just get immersed into the landscape of Alaska. And to give you an idea, that first day when you are driving from Anchorage to Valdez, don't just say we're on a bus, I'm going to fall asleep. No, 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 no. You want to be looking out the windows. And to give you an idea, I saw a moose. There's these amazing braided rivers. There's just some really neat scenery with the wilderness that you're going to see. And depending on how the weather, if it's cooperating or not, you may get to stop here at one of the glaciers that you'd be passing. Now, this glacier, okay, first of all, not all glaciers come down out of the mountains and touch water. Like, for example, there's no lake here. So basically, these glaciers are just up in the mountains, right? They're coming down from the mountains, and of course, they're going to have an end. And that's what we're looking at, is this glacier that's wound its way down from the peaks of the mountains. And here's the part that we can actually stop and see. There was another glacier viewing experience on this itinerary as well. There's another one. So if maybe the weather's not working out at one, you may be able to stop and see this one off in the distance. And again, maybe not as impressive, because you're thinking, well, that's not necessarily that iconic view from the water. You want to be able to immerse yourself into that landscape, whatever it is in Alaska, to really understand how different all glaciers are. They all have their own personality. Okay. Another thing that on your trip to Valdez, you're going to go through a pass. A mountain pass is pretty much, getting over the ridge of a mountain. These are those pathways or those roadways that have been carved out. They're usually one of the highest points on that roadway. And so, for example, this could be one of the passes that you get to see. This is Thompson Pass. The exact route may change, but for the most part, this I I was so lucky that on this day we drove past it and it's like, oh my goodness, look how clear all of this is. You could just see this is all snow on here. It almost looks like clouds because it was just sweeping through. You could see where the wind just normally takes the snow. Absolutely stunning. So Thompson Pass, you want to be able, as you're driving, your tour guides know where to pull off, where those scenic overlooks are. And at times, this may be super cloudy. There's actually a picture I'll show you as we came back out of Valdez. We went over the same pass, and definitely not the same experience. So you want to make sure that even if you saw it yesterday, stop and see it again. Keep your eyes open for what it might look like that second day. Also, before you get to Valdez, keep your eye open for some waterfalls along the side of the road. There's a creek that the road's pretty much following, like this little river or creek, and the right off the side of the mountains, right by the road, are some amazing waterfalls. So you haven't even gotten to your first destination yet, and these are all of the landscapes that you could just be a part of. And immediately you on this bus ride, right? The buses are awesome because you actually get to stop and experience these destinations versus just driving past them. Okay. So this is that's pretty much your second day of the itinerary, is arriving to Valdez. You will get some free time in Valdez that evening, because the next day you are headed out onto the water of Prince William Sound. Now, what does actually on this itinerary, I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself. So let's just show you. This is kind of the town of Valdez. It's a fishing town built right off of the of let's say the bay. Okay, Prince William Sound, it's a bay, or it's a sound, I guess. But right off of the water, there's a little fishing town there, and then right behind it are some mountains. So some of these very iconic shots, you can find that. They have a really neat sign. So wander around the town, go grab a bite to eat that first day when you get into Valdez, and typically in the next morning, you're going to do something with a local guide, your local fisherman, a local who's involved in the fishing industry, because this local experience that's on this itinerary really allows you to interact with the people who live and work in this area. So it depends on what the salmon are doing. So I don't know what I'm saying. If they're in, if the salmon are swimming, if the salmon are in the area, because they're not there all summer, your experience to see the salmon may be a little bit different if there aren't any salmon. So for example, I was not there. They took us over to the actual salmon hatchery. They showed us the process, and they showed us what it would be like if the salmon were running at that time of year. Okay. Your experience with the local guide may change based on what's going on with Mother Nature. And it's so neat, though, to walk around with the local who really does give an inside view of what life is like living in this area, working in the fishing industry. Also, the next that main full day that you're in Valdez, you want to get out on the water. So giving you an idea, you will be getting out onto a boat. I think I skipped 1 second. Let me find where I'm at. So you'll be getting out onto a boat and getting getting a different perspective of what Alaska's like from the water. Now, so many people's livelihoods depend on the water, getting out there, whether they're fishing or whether, again, in this case, it's tourism. But also here in this photo, you can see where the pipeline ends. You probably remember the Exxon Valdez and the oil spill and the problem with that. Well, this Valdez is where the pipeline kind of comes together, where they store everything in these containers up on this hillside, and then they load them onto the ships. So they're going to bring all of that history and detail to life for you by talking with the locals. Okay. Also, once you're out on the water, what you really want to keep your eye open for is the marine life, the wildlife that's out there. And to give you an idea, you could be sitting there chit-chatting. See how we're all kind of like up here with the pilot at first, which was really neat. Everyone's looking out the window. We could be talking, but don't look at each other when you talk. Look out the window. It doesn't matter if you're inside, if you're outside. The best view is looking out the side of the ship, because it's so neat when you're just scanning the view, and then somebody goes, "Oh, look, did you see that whale jump?" And you're like, "Oh, I missed it because I was facing in the other direction. I actually missed two of them that jumped fully out of the water and landed." And I was just like, dang it, because I was looking in the wrong spot. So this is a long day. You're out on the water pretty much all day. They're going to feed you lunch while you're on this boat experience. But the whole thing is to kind of just keep your eyes open for that marine life, because you never know when you're going to see it. Giving you an idea, let's show you what you could see when it comes to marine life. This is a harbor seal. This is one of my favorites. If you know me, you know that I painted one of these and I named it Kenny for Kenai Fjords. That's the other time you get out on the water. But this is a harbor seal. And take a look at this iceberg over here. Do you see those little dots? That's sometimes what they look like from the distance. You're going to want to bring binoculars or a camera with a major zoom lens. These guys right here is this picture when I zoomed in, and it's this picture when I zoomed in and I cropped it. You see that far away? I feel like who is it? One of the little Muppet guys on is it Grover? Near, far, near, far. You know what I'm talking about on Sesame Street? So here's how far away we really are. Here's when I zoomed in, and then here's just a better shot of what I took. So binoculars are definitely important. Another thing to keep your eye open for are the sea otters. Now, these were a little bit closer to the ship. You may see some rafts of them floating by. You may see some that are kind of just by themselves. They'll also be up on some of the icebergs as well. So keep an eye on those. Just because you see a spot doesn't mean it's a harbor seal. It could be a sea otter. And there's also the sea lions, these tend to be a bit more grouped together, very noisy, very loud, but they could also be swimming by the boat. They tend to kind of follow you along as well. So they're definitely not scared of the boat noise. Plus, there's whale that you may be able to spot. And down here, that's actually a dolphin that kind of looks like a killer whale, but it is a dolphin. There's tuffins, and then up on the mountainside, keep your eye open for, in some areas, they'll let you know if bear is common to an area, but these are actually some mountain goats up here, and then there's a little baby mountain goat behind that white dot. Do you see the big white dot and the little white dot? Yeah, pretty cool, huh? Um, and then they are taking you, they're not just riding around, they're headed somewhere. So this boat is headed to a glacier. Now, depending if weather is cooperating, you may or may not get to see something like this. Columbia Glacier, sometimes it's cloudy, sometimes it's clear, sometimes those blues are really popping, other times, it kind of just fades in with the background a little bit. But Columbia Glacier is huge. Take a look at this mountain peak in the background and this glacier side. You're not going to get super close to the glacier, but you're going to get closer than like the large cruise ships can get, okay? On this particular spot right here, look at this peak. I want to show you the real size of this glacier. That photo I just showed you was right here, that peak with right here in front. Look how wide. This is a panoramic photo. Look how wide that glacier is. And then here's some people on the boat. This was the complete view of it. Absolutely stunning. Hopefully weather cooperates so that you get to experience these glaciers that come down and touch the water side. And so that day on the itinerary, that is day 3, and it talks about the scenic cruise on Prince William Sound to Columbia Glacier. Hopefully you get to experience something like this, okay? Then you're back to Valdez, you get a good night's rest. The next day on the itinerary, let me go back to it. So you're here. It shows it kind of going around a loop. It's not a circle. You're pretty much taking the highway on up. It's just, they're just drawing this stuff on here for you. But you're headed to Fairbanks. This is probably your longest drive. There's going to be some stops and a nice place for lunch and different of course the phone just rang. Sorry about that. But there's going to be some different stops along here, but you want to just immerse yourself in the Alaska landscape. So, for example, I'm going to pull up some pictures. Now I'm sliding across the bottom. One of the things I want you to keep your eye open for is the pipeline. Over here on the right-hand side, the pipeline is going to come. Sometimes you're going to see it, sometimes you're not, sometimes you're going to see it, and it's pretty big. Hopefully you can do this stop where you get out and you get to go touch it, you get to stand by it, you get to take some pictures, because here's a picture of me on my tiptoes and I still couldn't reach the top, right? At times, the pipeline goes over the rivers, and at times you see where it kind of looks like it's going into the ground. Well, that's because it is. And then here it's going under this lake or under this river and then back up the mountainside. Really neat to just keep your eye on how the pipeline, it has its own personality. At times it's all jig-jaggy, and other times it's on a suspension bridge. Other times it's zigging this way, and other times it's perfectly straight. Really neat to know. Ask as many questions to your local guide. That's what they're there for, so that you can really understand, especially if you're into like how it was built. There's some really amazing technology that they've used to build this pipeline. Plus just landscapes in general. I did want to go back to this. Okay, where's it going with this? Do you remember where I said that pass, and when I had some really amazing views of it, and then the next day it was all cloudy? Here's what it looked like on the way out of Valdez. Just the difference of a few hours, right? A couple of days. But it cleared up, and you can see some mountains in the distance like this. You can see these amazing lakes with all of this wilderness and greenery, all of these evergreens that are in the area. They open up to different lakes where there's some houses on the side of it. Like right here, you can see this like cabin or of a house. And then off to the side of that was like their float plane. So this is actually describing how people live in this region of Alaska. And some braided rivers, where all of those rivers, that it's not just like the rivers in our area, it's pretty much all of this sediment that gets pulled down from the rivers, from the glaciers, from the mountaintop, and there's a lot of just twisty windiness in the waters of the river. Really beautiful. Sometimes things may still be frozen, so you can get all of these different views just within a couple-hour drive. I loved it. There was no way I was going to sleep through this particular drive. Plus, you got to get out, have lunch, see a couple of other things, and for the most part, on that day, you're just headed to Fairbanks. You will have some free time in Fairbanks that evening, and you can talk to your local guide about what it is to do if you wanted to go hang out in downtown Fairbanks a little bit, which is this picture. There's not as much in Fairbanks to do in the downtown area, but they built in quite a few activities into your itinerary for Fairbanks, though. And I want to talk about the activities real quick. Everything I'm showing you, unless I say it's optional, is included. This itinerary means we're taking you here to do this. We're taking you to Valdez to get out onto the water. We're taking you to Fairbanks so that you can have some of these experiences. For example, this Sternwheeler Discovery. Yes, great. So you want to get on a little riverboat, right? Well, there's some history to this riverboat, and it really brings the experience to life. So you're going to be on the Chena River, and they show you how the float planes use the river. Again, if weather is cooperating, they'll show you along the river are some of these amazing houses. First of all, I just had to I have a whole sheet of just different houses we saw. But there's also this dog training facility that's right there off at the river, and you may stop and watch them do a little demonstration from the boat. Really neat experience. That's we'll come back to this because you're going to see a better experience for the sled dogs here in a moment. And also on the Chena River is this Indian village. This was really neat because you got to see how the people who have lived in Alaska and survived for hundreds and hundreds of years, what are some of the tools that they used? How did they build some of their houses? It kind of evolved over time, and they really bring this history to life. There are some younger people doing some of the demonstrations, but it's their family history. So really neat to interact with them, ask about, their daily life, what it is that they do, because they love, you can tell when they're explaining stuff to you that they actually really want you to understand and to ask as many questions that you may have, and really interact with them. Okay. So that's part of your Fairbanks experience, but it's not over yet. Also in Fairbanks, now, this is something that's a little tricky. There's gold dredge number 8. This is a part of the gold mining experience, and they're going to bring it to life by putting you on a train. And it says on the itinerary there's a train ride on narrow gauge railroad to the gold dredge number 8. Okay, I don't really call this a train ride. It almost feels like those trains at an amusement park where it just kind of travels in a circle around the park. Okay, so they have this area that really does try to at least show you what gold mining was like in, gosh, it really wasn't even that long ago. But when the gold rush hit Alaska, the land was really hard. So they pretty much show you how they used all of these different techniques to break up the land so that you can access the gold. And all of these pictures of them trying to bring this story to life so that you can see, wow, this was really hard work. And then while you're on this little train, it takes you around to the area where they're going to get you off of the train, and you get to try your own panning for gold. Right? I thought this was going to be really cheesy, and I actually enjoyed this a lot more than I thought, and it was harder than I thought. And then just watching some of the people that you've met maybe on your tour do this is where, the one guy just dumped all of his. He's like, I lost my gold, and they came back and they started over again. I mean, it was really funny just to see all the different personalities really come together while you're just trying to sift through some dirt with some water in a pan to find these little gold specks. A little bit cheesy, but definitely fun. And I really did enjoy this experience more than I thought I would. Plus, in Fairbanks, also included, okay, so you got the boat ride on the Chena River with all of the things included as part of that boat experience. You have the gold dredge number 8, and you have the Alaska salmon bake. So even if you don't like fish, they do have they have a different type of fish, cod, and they have like meat there, but they also have like this buffet. Basically, it's this outdoor eating area that you can go inside and eat inside of this room, so that's covered. But it's this outdoor area that's just really neat to see some of the local food options. If you're not big into meat and fish, they did have like a salad and some pasta and some other options there, but it's not a massive buffet. So I mean, this is the buffet line. Okay. Now you may have the experience, or I'm sorry, you may have the opportunity to add on the Palace Theater if they're offering that while you're there. So this was an optional activity. I signed up for it. I loved it. I thought it was funny, entertaining, um, kind of hokey, but definitely really cool. I loved it. But it is an optional activity, and it may or may not be on your list just depending on the dates that you end up being there. So we'll work on all of those details. We'll work on customizing what those optional activities are. But my point is, in Fairbanks, you have a lot that's included, and then you do have a little bit of time to just kind of go out and take advantage of seeing downtown if you would like. Okay? From Fairbanks, let's go back to the map. Whoops. Let's go. Wow. Okay, so let me do this because I'm going to have to keep one of these on the map. That's what my intentions were. So you're up top at Fairbanks. I don't want to say you're halfway through because on number of days you're not halfway through, but you're halfway through on the east to west of your itinerary. We're going to take that Alaska Railroad, and I'll show you some pictures of that train and head into Denali National Park. Okay, so this is day 6 of your itinerary, and here is what that train ride looks like. Yeah, I think this is what everyone wants, right? You want these panoramic windows, really spacious. You can see some people walking around, lots of room to move about. It's on the upper deck of the train, so you can see that there's 2 decks here, and then the lower deck. They'll offer some food and stuff like that. We will make sure, depending on the itinerary, you will know if the food is included, if you have breakfast on the train, or however your specific itinerary is. But you're constantly going to be watching out the windows. There's the open air platforms as well that you can stand on. I think I have a photo here. So if you walk all the way to the back of the train, or even just to those segments in the back of the cars, you can be in these open air platforms and take a look out of the landscape here. It's pretty flat. You're going through some wilderness for some of the ride, but then as you get closer to Denali, you're into that mountain range again, and it really starts to get into these deep gorges, and you can see the river. If you're going to do an optional river rafting experience or something like that, you're actually going to see those different areas where your rafting experience could be. So keep an eye for some rafters in the water as you're traveling past there. Plus the Nenana Ice Classic. If you don't know what that is, that's when they put this, they attach this to the water with like a rope, kind of. And when the water, it's all covered in ice, and when that ice breaks up and the thing collapses, it dings a bell into this upper part of this, and that's the official start of spring. So we can go into some more details about that, but you will pass by that between Fairbanks and Denali. So keep an eye open for that famous little hut, I guess we can call it. Okay, you're into Denali, but you're not going into the park that first night. That first night when you reach Denali, you're going to have a group dinner. Give me 1 second. Let me see. Okay, you're going to have a group dinner, and it's going to be with the local naturalists. They're going to do a presentation, and I know this looks really boring, but you can see that our chairs are set out. This is where we're going to eat dinner, and we're going to eat while we listen to somebody do a presentation on the park. This is awesome for prepping you for what to expect tomorrow when you go into the park. That you will have a driver who's a park ranger with you on your trip, but as far as asking questions, and it's a lot easier to interact with those naturalists and the park rangers here this first evening when you're at this visitor center and they're doing this speak with you. It's a little dorky, but it definitely helps bring your next day in the park to life. Okay. Plus, on this first evening, when you get into Denali, this is when you have free time to do those optional activities. You can see some pictures of me at the bottom with some other people doing the whitewater rafting. There's whitewater rafting. There's a float that's not in whitewater down the river, so in the calmer areas of the water. Plus, you can get out into the airplanes and the helicopters and do those flight seeing tours to possibly see Denali, um, the peak, like the mountain Denali, not the park, right? So the Denali Mountain, and maybe even land on it and do a glacier landing experience. All of that's customizable. All of that is optional, and you have some free time built into your Denali experience. Okay. This next day, you get out into the park, and these are just some stupid pictures that I took of funny road signs. So let's kind of get out into this. Okay. When you do your park experience, it has to be with the on the park buses. So you're going to leave your nice, comfortable tour bus behind, and you're going to get on one of these national park buses. It's an old school bus, but they've taken out those seats, those really uncomfortable old school bus seats, and they've put in some decent seats. You are going to be in this bus pretty much all day long, and and they're going to bring you lunch. It's a little bit kind of a box lunch. It's really not that great. So if you really want to just bring a couple of extra snacks with you that day, definitely bring a couple extra snacks because it suffices. You're out, into the park all day. At least you have some food, but you might want to bring a couple of snacks of your own. And you will be able to get out of the bus. They have some bathroom breaks. You can see that's kind of some bathrooms over to the side. Plus, they have this sort of makeshift visitor center down here in this weird tented area that you can stop at. But you can see this is a little bit windy. So if you have problems with that, definitely remember to bring those wristbands or take a pill or whatever you do for motion sickness. And this is pretty much the landscape that you're going to be driving on. You're getting deep into the park. Of course, you want to keep your eyes open. Your driver right up here has a headset on, and she has, he or she, ours was a she has a TV screen right behind her, okay? She has these binoculars. So if you see wildlife off in the distance and you're having a hard time finding it, look up on these TV monitors in the bus because they're binoculars. They're going to zoom in on what they find and they're going to tell you, hey, look, here's where you're looking. Absolutely bring binoculars and bring those zoom cameras, okay? Because it's really important. Most of the wildlife is going to be further away out into this big range that you're driving through. And not necessarily right next to the bus. So a couple of things that you can keep your eyes open for are caribou. So here's plenty of caribou. Caribou are basically reindeer, but reindeer are domesticated. Caribou are out in the wild. So if you think you see a reindeer, this is what you're looking at. Okay, none of them have red noses though. Maybe some bear. Uh, so hopefully you get to see some bear. There's also wolf in the area. Um, I did not get to see any wolves, but they're there. There's, let's see here, which picture here? Okay, so here's some doll sheep. Those sheep are white, and so depending on it, these were up on the hillside, so they're just these little white specks. Again, zoom in as much as you can. Here's a couple of them when I zoomed in. A little bit harder to see on this ridge, but this is not a petting zoo. They're out in the wild, and you're going to be having to look off in the distance. Okay, so this is really cool. I'm so happy that I got to see these sheep, but again, they weren't up close. Here were a couple of caribou that were hanging out on this little patch of snow. And then we did get to see a couple of bear. Again, it was raining. Look how beautiful this picture is. And look, it's raining here. You're going for miles into the park. That's the weather, the getting into the mountains, out of the mountains, all of that changes almost like with every single turn, it felt like. So you have to be ready for anything. We also saw some people, some hikers and some bikers and stuff, which was kind of crazy. But this bear, what I want to point out is that there's two of them. Do you see this? There's two of them here and even right here. This one you can hardly see. It's really neat because all of a sudden you're like, hey, we see something. And then it disappears. All of the shrubbery, they just kind of blend right in. So you really have to keep your eyes peeled. Your guide will tell you, will ask for your help. If you think you spot something, say it out loud so that everybody can kind of get the chance to see it. You're going to be stopping on the bus. It's not just going to keep going. You'll be stopping. You'll be trying to do some sightseeing, but it's all from the bus. Okay. So you just have to make sure to bring enough to drink and a couple of extra snacks with you. If you're lucky, I almost don't want to show this to you, but I am going to show it as a teaser. Sometimes they might get up close. You see this bear? Yeah, it was right off the side of the road. I mean, and it just stopped to kind of eat, and it is right here. Do you see it? I did not have to zoom in for this photo. Awesome. You never know what you're going to see. You just have to be super patient. Even this caribou, it was climbing up the hillside, and it just kind of stopped when it saw our bus, kind of looked at us, and then it, continued on down the hillside, or was climbing up the hillside and then continued up the hillside. You just never know what that Denali experience is going to look like. Okay. And animals aren't always guaranteed. It's very Mother Nature. Sometimes it's cloudy through here. I did not also get to see the peak of Denali mountain, right? The mountain peak. I did not get to see that. Others, when you do this turnaround, you might really get to see that off in the distance. So you kind of just have to take it for what that experience is. Okay. Let's go back to the map. You're out of Denali. You're going to head back down to Anchorage area. And on your way down, you want to stop at Big Lake. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything to you. But in Big Lake is something really cool. And I want to show this picture to you. This is where you stop at Happy Trails Kennels. And this is the training facility for someone who won the Iditarod, Martin Busser. Okay. And if you're lucky, maybe there's going to be some puppies that you get to hold and interact with, but there's all of these dogs. They'll love seeing you. They'll jump up. They'll try to lick you. You can see them all licking, like this one's licking that lady. This one's jumping up to try to lick her. That guy just got a kiss. So if you love animals, if you love dogs, this is an amazing experience as well. Of course, they're going to show you how the dogs are trained, but there's no snow to show what it would be like for the Iditarod. So they use ATVs without the motor, and the dogs actually just pull these ATVs. Really neat, very unique, but this is how they keep the dogs trained during the summer months. Plus, you're going to have lunch there in this like outdoor, really neat wooden area, and it's kind of just like again, more of like a box lunch as part of your experience, so that you don't have to peel off for 2 hours just to go to the nearest fast food restaurant. They're going to build as many of the lunches and dinners into this itinerary as possible so that you get the most out of your time while in Alaska. So this itinerary includes 4 lunches and 4 dinners when it makes sense to include them, and then when you actually have time to go out and choose where you want to have dinner, you have the option to kind of customize that experience and eat some of the local cuisine as well. Okay. Okay. Also on your way back down to Anchorage, there's a heritage center that you'll visit. And here's some of some pictures from that as well over on this right-hand side, where you get to see how Alaskans over the several years have lived. And now you're in Anchorage. You're going to spend the night in Anchorage for 2 nights, but you're not necessarily spending time in Anchorage, okay? That first night when you get there, there is an experience with an Alaska bush pilot. He's going to do a presentation while you're having dinner, and it's another interaction with a local where you really get to see, oh man, they have to fly everywhere, and here's a presentation while we're enjoying our meal of what it's really like to live up there and get to those remote areas of Alaska and to move goods around or to move people around. And that's pretty neat too. So that day you do have dinner included so that you can interact with the locals, especially the bush pilots. Okay, the next day, we're almost there. This is day 9 on your itinerary. This is your last full day, and you're headed down to the Seward area. The Kenai Fjords National Park is off of the Seward area, and it is another day to get out into the water on one of these boat experiences and enjoy the scenery. We've already talked about that. I love this picture though, because off on one of the shores, we saw some people with their tents, and it's just really neat to see what camping is like if you were one of the locals up in Alaska, right? Scenery is a little different here too. So if you're like, hey, I was already out on a boat, I don't need to go on this one. There's one lady on my tour where she wasn't feeling too well. She had a bit of a cold, and I think she skipped this day. And she's like, I've already gone out on a boat. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like the experience changes all the time. Also, if there's 2 days of getting out onto the boat, This is perfect because maybe the first time it was cloudy, it was rainy, it was foggy, the weather wasn't that great. You couldn't get as close to the glaciers as you wanted. You have a second chance to make that happen. Or vice versa. Maybe the first time was amazing, and then the second time it's like, oh man, weather is just not cooperating, and you'll get what you get out of it. But um, it's really neat to see both of those type of weather situations that Alaska is known for. In my case, both days were fairly clear, and we got an opportunity to see a mix of more marine life. Here's some more birds, here's your harbor seals, here's a sea otter, and here's a couple of whales. This is the one that I missed. I did not see it in the air, but I did get it splashing down. You can see its bottom fins right here. And there's also a chance to see maybe humpback whales. On this second day, I actually saw more whales than on my first time out. Okay. Took lots of pictures. We also saw some killer whales in this area. There's also gray whales in the area. Okay. Um, the sea lions are also here. Yeah, this one actually, he was looking right at me. He knew I was taking this picture. Look at that, just posing for me. And the puffins, I love this photo that I got. The puffins this time were a bit closer to our boat, so we were able to get a few better pictures. And then, of course, your goal is to see another glacier. And this was the glacier experience that we were able to get out on the water the second time in Kenai Fjords. And it's not nearly as long and wide. You can see by some of these pictures down here. But I will say, off in this distance, do you see all these little dots? Yeah, here's some of your harbor seals. And then check this out. Yeah, I got to see those ice chunks falling into the water. You can see them here breaking off, falling, 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 splash, splash, and then this is the final photo. And to put that splash into perspective, these little black dots, those are your harbor seals. Now, remember when I said you want to keep scanning the distance? Really important because so many people are like, oh my gosh, I missed it. They turned around and they missed it. Let me go back to this photo. Do you see how my camera looks like it's like glued to my head? I swear I didn't move. My arms were getting so tired. I just kept focused anywhere over there because I was like, I'm not going to miss something. If something happens, I am not going to miss this. You may not want to be doing that with the camera, but you definitely want to be looking out while you're there almost the whole time because you just don't know if you're going to get an experience, if you're going to be able to see something like the glacier calving and even hearing that noise. It's pretty cool. Um, Last thing, as you're coming back up to the Anchorage area, keep your eyes open for the waters as you're passing back into between Anchorage and Seward. You're on Turnagain Arm, which is this inlet. The waters are going to look kind of muddy, especially along the sides here. This is actually really broken down. It almost acts like quicksand and pretty dangerous to go walk out on here, but you may see some bald eagles. You may see just the landscape is impressive. And then these, depending on the time of year, this is actually a statue that's carved into the sidewalk, but it's of a beluga. Those white whales, this is where they kind of hang out. So if you think you see something kind of whitish popping out of the water, you may be, you may get to see a beluga. This is between Seward and Anchorage. A lot of opportunity of some amazing sightseeing, getting immersed into the Alaska landscape, all within 8 days, really. 10 days total. You have the 2 days of travel on the bookends and 8 days of just stuff. And if this sounds like a tour that you're interested in, we can talk about the dates. We can talk about how this is working into 2021 because you can make this trip happen for this upcoming travel season.